Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. End of part 1. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. End of part 1. Anna's heart raced as she looked at Grant, who was now awake, his eyes blinking and shifting in a way that felt so surreal to her. She had never imagined this moment. For days, she had cared for him, talked to him as though he could hear her, but nothing could have prepared her for this. His hand was still weakly holding hers, but the touch was there, real. She stared at him in disbelief, unsure of what to do next. "Grant," she whispered, her voice shaking. His eyes, still hazy, found hers. His lips parted, but no sound came out. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. His hand tightened slightly around hers, and Anna couldn't help but feel a rush of emotion. She had been here for so long, giving so much of herself, and now, she was witnessing the miracle she had hoped for, yet never truly believed could happen. The alarms began to blare as the medical staff rushed into the room, led by Dr. Harris. Anna stepped back, her eyes never leaving Grant's face, her mind spinning. The doctors quickly took control, monitoring his vital signs, but Anna felt like she was in a daze. Her hands were still trembling from the shock of it all. Dr. Harris looked at her, his face a mix of surprise and concern. "Anna, are you okay?" he asked, but Anna didn't answer. She was too overwhelmed to speak. Instead, she watched as Grant's eyes slowly closed again, his body retreating back into the stillness of the coma. As the doctors continued to assess Grant, Anna quietly stepped back, her mind racing. She didn't know what this meant. She had been so focused on keeping him alive, on doing her job, that she hadn't considered what it would be like if he actually woke up. Was this the beginning of something new, something real? Or was it just a brief moment of hope, fleeting and false? She didn't know, but she couldn't ignore the way her heart had fluttered when their eyes met. It was a feeling she hadn't expected, a connection that was more than just professional. Later that evening, Anna found herself sitting alone in the hospital's break room, her mind still on Grant. She hadn't expected to feel this way, this rush of emotions, the overwhelming sense of something shifting inside her. She tried to calm herself, but the excitement and uncertainty of the situation left her feeling shaken. As much as she told herself to stay focused on her duties, she couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Dr. Harris. "Grant is stable for now, but we need to keep a close eye on him. I want you to stay with him tomorrow." Anna read the message twice, absorbing the words. Stay with him tomorrow. It felt like an impossible request, yet she knew it was necessary. She had been assigned to care for him, to be his lifeline, and now that he was awake, she couldn't turn away. The next few days passed in a blur. Grant was awake, but weak, and his memories were fragmented. He couldn't remember the accident, or the years leading up to it. But he remembered her. He remembered Anna. Every time she entered the room, his eyes would follow her, and when she spoke, he seemed to listen intently. It was strange. He hadn't spoken much, but his gaze was enough to make Anna's heart skip a beat. She would catch herself thinking of him even when she wasn't with him, wondering if he was thinking about her too. Despite his condition, Grant's presence in the room was different now. It wasn't just the machines, the tubes, and the sterile smell of the hospital. It was the energy in the air, the strange new dynamic that had shifted. They weren't just patient and nurse anymore. There was something more between them. Anna had tried to keep her distance, to maintain professionalism, but it was becoming harder and harder. The way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the world who mattered to him, made her question everything. One evening, as she sat by his bedside, watching him sleep, Anna felt a pang in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was unfolding between them, something she wasn't ready to admit. Was it the proximity, the care she had given him over the past weeks? Or was it something more? She had spent so much of her life keeping her emotions in check, not allowing herself to get too close to anyone, to avoid the heartbreak that always seemed to follow. But with Grant, it was different. There was a part of her that wanted to stay, to keep caring for him, to be there when he needed her most. As the days passed, Grant began to regain his strength. He started physical therapy, and while it was slow, there was progress. He was more alert, more aware of his surroundings. But Anna noticed something else too. His eyes lingered on her longer than usual, his touch more deliberate when their hands brushed. She couldn't help but wonder, was this just the influence of the care she had given him, or was it something more? One night, as Anna was adjusting his foreline, Grant finally spoke. "Anna," he said, his voice hoarse and soft. "Thank you. For everything." It was the first time he had spoken to her in a way that felt personal, not just a medical necessity. Anna froze for a moment, her hands stilling as she turned to look at him. His eyes were filled with gratitude, and something else, something she couldn't name. It made her heart swell, and at that moment, she realized just how much she had come to care for him. "You don't have to thank me," Anna said softly, trying to hide the emotion in her voice. "I'm just doing my job." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about them. And she couldn't ignore the feeling that had been growing inside her, the pull between them that had been impossible to deny. As she left the room that night, she glanced back at him one last time. Grant Carter, the man who had once been an untouchable billionaire, was awake, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Anna realized that she was no longer just a nurse to him. She was something more. End of part 2. As the days passed, Grant's recovery progressed slowly but surely. Anna continued to care for him with the same dedication, though now there was a new layer to their relationship. She wasn't just his nurse anymore, there was an unspoken connection between them, something that made every interaction feel more intimate, even though she tried to keep it professional. Grant's mind was still hazy, and he had trouble remembering the events that led to his accident, but he remembered Anna. Every time he woke up, his eyes searched for her, and when she spoke, he listened as if she were the only person in the world who mattered. One afternoon, as Anna adjusted his foreline, Grant looked up at her with a faint, almost imperceptible smile. His eyes, once distant and clouded, were clearer now, focused on her. "Anna," he whispered, his voice still weak. "You've been here for so long, you've given me more than I can ever repay." Anna felt a lump form in her throat. She tried to push it down, not wanting her emotions to get the best of her. "It's my job, Grant," she replied softly, her voice steady despite the way her heart was racing. "I'm just doing what I'm trained to do." But Grant's gaze didn't leave hers. His eyes were filled with something deeper, something more than just gratitude. Anna could feel the way he looked at her, the way his hand would find hers whenever she was near. It wasn't just a simple thank you. It was something more personal, more meaningful. And in that moment, Anna couldn't deny it any longer. She had begun to care for him in ways she never intended. She had been so focused on doing her job, on keeping her emotions in check, but now she couldn't escape the feeling that she was falling for him. Later that day, Anna found herself sitting in the break room, trying to distract herself from the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. She had always been professional, always kept a distance from her patients. It was the only way she knew how to protect herself from getting hurt. But Grant was different. She didn't know how or why, but he was. She found herself thinking about him even when she wasn't at the hospital. His quiet strength, the way his presence seemed to fill the room, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, it was all becoming too much to ignore. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair as she looked down at her phone. There was a message from her mother asking how things were going with work. Anna hadn't told her about Grant yet, hadn't mentioned how much he had come to mean to her. She didn't know how to explain it, How could she tell her mother that the patient she had been assigned to care for had become more than just a patient? Anna stood up from the table, trying to push her feelings aside. It wasn't right. She couldn't allow herself to get caught up in something like this. She was a nurse, and he was a patient. No matter how awake he was, no matter how much they seemed to connect, their worlds were too different. And yet, every time she saw him, every time he smiled at her or spoke to her, she felt something she couldn't explain. She didn't know if it was love, or something else, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt. The following week, Anna sat by Grant's bedside again, this time holding his hand as he rested. His recovery had reached a crucial stage. Was awake, alert, and starting to remember more about his life before the accident. He still didn't remember everything, but he remembered the important things: his company, his legacy, and the people who had been in his life. But one thing he couldn't remember was why he had ended up in the accident in the first place. Anna had been with him every step of the way, but she didn't know the answer either. Grant opened his eyes slowly, his gaze meeting Anna's. "Anna," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done." Anna squeezed his hand, trying to keep her composure. "You don't need to thank me, Grant. I'm just doing my job." But Grant wasn't convinced. He looked at her, his expression serious. "I know you're doing your job, but it's more than that. You've been here with me, day after day. You've taken care of me when no one else would. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you for that." Anna felt a pang in her chest, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. She wanted to tell him the truth, that it wasn't just about the job for her. That she had started to care for him in ways she never expected. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just nodded, unable to speak for fear that her emotions would spill out. Grant, sensing her hesitation, gave her a small smile. "Anna," he said softly. "I don't remember everything, but I remember you. I'll never forget what you've done for me." His words hit her harder than she expected, and for the first time in a long while, Anna let herself believe that maybe this wasn't just about caring for a patient. Maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something more. As Anna left the hospital that evening, her mind was still reeling. She had been a professional for so long, keeping her emotions at bay. But now, standing at the threshold of the hospital, she realized that she couldn't run from what she was feeling anymore. She had begun to care for Grant in a way that went beyond the boundaries of her job. She had let herself become emotionally invested, and now she had to face the consequences of that decision. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if Grant would remember everything, or if they could ever be more than just nurse and patient. But one thing was certain: things had changed. And for the first time in a long time, Anna found herself hoping for something more. End of part 3. The following week, Anna felt a shift in the air. Grant's recovery was progressing, but it felt as though the more he healed, the more complicated their connection became. She had kept a professional distance for so long, but now, it seemed impossible to do so. Every glance they shared, every word he spoke, felt like it carried more weight than just a doctor-patient interaction. And yet, she tried to keep her emotions in check, telling herself she had a job to do, that she couldn't let herself get lost in something that could never be real. Grant, on the other hand, seemed more aware of his surroundings every day. He started asking more questions about his accident, about the people in his life, and about his company. His mind was sharp, but his memory was still hazy, and he would often look to Anna for answers. His reliance on her felt more intimate with each passing day, and Anna found herself drawn closer to him, despite the boundaries she had set for herself. One evening, as Anna entered his room to check on his vitals, Grant was sitting up in bed, his eyes fixed on her. There was something different in his gaze: softness, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. "Anna," he said, his voice low but steady. "I don't know how to say this, but I feel like I owe you more than just my thanks." Anna paused, her breath catching in her throat. She had spent so much time pushing her feelings aside, convincing herself that this was just a temporary connection. But now, as Grant looked at her with those searching eyes, she couldn't deny that her heart was racing. "You've already given me more than I ever expected, Grant," she replied softly, trying to keep her composure. Grant didn't seem to hear her words. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it extended toward her. "No, Anna," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You've been here for me when no one else was. You've cared for me, not just as a patient, but as a person. I don't know what I would have done without you." The intensity in his voice made Anna's pulse quicken. She felt the weight of his words, and for a moment, she was speechless. She wanted to say something, wanted to tell him how much his words meant to her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she stood there, frozen, as he continued to speak. "I don't want to make any promises I can't keep," Grant said, his gaze never leaving hers. "But I want you to know that what you've done for me, it's more than just care. It's changed me. You've changed me." Anna felt a lump form in her throat. She had tried so hard to keep her distance, but in that moment, standing in the quiet of his hospital room, she realized that she couldn't anymore. She had fallen for him, and there was no denying it. Before she could respond, Grant continued. "I know I'm not the man I was before the accident. I don't remember everything. But I remember you, Anna. And that means more to me than anything else." Anna's heart swelled at his words, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel everything she had been holding back. She had been so focused on her responsibilities, so determined not to let her emotions cloud her judgment. But now, standing in front of him, she couldn't ignore what she felt any longer. "Grant," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what to say," Grant gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you. I don't know where we go from here, but I know I want to find out with you." Anna's breath hitched, and she fought to keep the tears at bay. She had never expected this, never imagined that she would find herself in this situation. But as she stood there, looking at Grant, she realized that this wasn't just about her job anymore. It was about them. It was about the connection they had formed, the bond that had grown between them, despite everything. Over the next few days, Anna tried to keep things professional, but it became increasingly difficult. Grant was more alert, more engaged, and his presence seemed to fill the room. He started to joke with her, share stories from his past, and ask her about her life. It was as though they were building something real, something more than just a nurse-patient relationship. One afternoon, as Anna sat beside his bed, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping in. She had promised herself that she wouldn't get emotionally involved, that she wouldn't let her feelings for Grant cloud her judgment. But as the days passed, it became harder and harder to separate her emotions from the job. She had never imagined that this would happen, that she would fall for a patient, a man who had been a stranger to her just weeks ago. Grant must have sensed her internal conflict because he reached out for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Anna," he said softly. "I don't know what the future holds. But I want you to know that I'm here. I want to be here with you." Anna felt her heart skip a beat, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. She had been so focused on keeping her distance, on protecting herself from getting hurt. But now, with Grant's words hanging in the air, she realized that she didn't want to keep running anymore. She didn't want to hide from what she was feeling. As she looked into his eyes, Anna knew that everything had changed. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a job anymore. It was something more. End of part 4. The days that followed were filled with a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. Anna had promised herself that she would keep things professional, but every time she was near Grant, it became harder to stick to that promise. The bond between them had grown so strong, it felt impossible to ignore. They shared quiet moments together, where they talked about everything and nothing. Grant had started to ask more about her life, about her dreams, her fears. He wasn't just the patient in the bed anymore, he was someone who cared, someone who was paying attention. And with every conversation, Anna found herself opening up more to him, revealing parts of herself she had kept hidden for so long. One afternoon, as Anna entered Grant's room, she noticed something different. He was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than ever. His eyes sparkled with a kind of energy she hadn't seen in weeks. He looked at her, and for a moment, the room felt as though it held its breath. "Anna," he said, his voice strong but soft, "I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't like him to be so serious, so intense. She sat down next to him, trying to read his expression. "What is it, Grant?" she asked, her voice trembling just a little. She had no idea what he was about to say, but the look in his eyes told her it was important. He took a deep breath and looked down at his hands before meeting her gaze again. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he began. "I know I haven't been the easiest person to deal with. And I know that the last few weeks have been strange. But I want you to know that I'm not just grateful for what you've done for me. It's more than that. It's everything. You've been here for me when no one else was. You've cared for me when I didn't even know I needed it. And I think I'm falling for you." Anna felt a rush of emotions flood through her. She hadn't expected him to say that, but in some way, she had known it was coming. The connection between them had been building for so long, and now, with his words hanging in the air, she couldn't deny what she was feeling anymore. She had been fighting it, telling herself that this was just a temporary situation, that it wasn't real. But now, there was no denying it. She was falling for him too. Grant looked at her, his expression full of uncertainty. "I know this is complicated, and I don't want to make things harder for you. I know I'm not the man I used to be, and I'm not sure what the future holds. But I want to see where this goes. I want to try, Anna. With you." Anna swallowed hard, her emotions swirling. She had never expected to feel like this. She had come into this job with clear boundaries, but now, those boundaries were crumbling. She had tried to keep her distance, but her feelings for him had only grown stronger. She had cared for him, not just as a nurse, but as someone who mattered. And now, it was as if everything she had been holding back was rushing to the surface. "Grant," she said softly, her voice shaking with emotion, "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect any of this. But you're right. It's complicated. And I don't know what to do with these feelings." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "But I can't ignore what's happening between us. I don't want to ignore it anymore." Grant's face softened as he reached for her hand, his touch gentle. "You don't have to figure everything out right now," he said quietly. "We'll take it one step at a time. I just needed you to know how I feel." Anna nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of getting hurt, scared of how this will change everything. But I'm also hopeful. Hopeful that maybe this could be something real." Grant smiled at her, a smile that reached his eyes, full of warmth and understanding. "I feel the same way," he said softly. "We'll figure it out together. I promise." As the days went on, Anna found herself growing closer to Grant. They continued to talk, to share moments of quiet connection, and the more they did, the more Anna realized that what they had was something special. It wasn't just about her caring for him anymore. It was about them finding each other, in the most unexpected of circumstances. And though the future was still uncertain, Anna couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth fighting for. But even as the connection between them deepened, Anna knew that they couldn't ignore the challenges ahead. Grant's recovery was still ongoing, and their relationship, however real it felt, was built on a foundation of uncertainty. She couldn't let herself forget that. But for the first time in a long time, Anna allowed herself to believe that maybe this wasn't just a fleeting connection. Maybe it was something more. Something worth the risk. End of part 5. As the days passed, the bond between Anna and Grant grew stronger. Their conversations became more personal, more meaningful. It wasn't just about his recovery and Marie, it was about them. They started to share more of themselves, their hopes, their dreams, and even their fears. Anna found herself laughing with him, something she hadn't done in a long time. His dry sense of humor, the way he would tease her in the most subtle way, made her feel lighter than she had in months. For the first time in a long time, Anna allowed herself to forget about the weight of the world on her shoulders. For a moment, she could just be herself, with him. But even with all the progress Grant had made, Anna couldn't shake the lingering doubts. The uncertainty of his recovery was always at the back of her mind. She knew he wasn't fully healed. He still had a long way to go before he was completely back to himself, and she wondered if the changes he was going through now would last. Would they remain the same once he fully recovered? Would he still feel the same way about her once he was back in his world of high-powered business meetings and multi-million-dollar deals? Or would this just be a fleeting moment, a memory of a time when he was vulnerable and she had been there to care for him? It was a thought that haunted her, even as she tried to push it aside. She had always been practical, always grounded in reality. She couldn't afford to get swept up in something that might not last. But every time she saw him, every time their hands brushed, or he looked at her with those soft eyes, it became harder to ignore the feeling that something real was happening between them. One evening, as she sat with him in his room, helping him with his physical therapy, Grant reached out and gently touched her arm. "Anna," he said, his voice calm but serious. "I know things have been moving fast, and I don't want to rush anything, but I need to ask you something." Anna looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. "What is it, Grant?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I want to take you out. I want to do something normal for us, something outside of this hospital room. We've spent so much time here, and I don't want our first date to be defined by medical equipment and recovery rooms. I want to show you who I really am, without the tubes and wires, without the hospital. Will you let me take you out?" Anna's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She had been so focused on his recovery, so wrapped up in their day-to-day routines, that she hadn't considered the possibility of something like this. A date. A chance to step outside of their roles as nurse and patient and just be two people who cared about each other. "Grant," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "I would love that." Grant smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Anna saw a glimpse of the man he had been before the accident. Confident, warm, and full of life. It was a side of him she had missed, and she realized in that moment how much she had come to depend on him, how much he had come to mean to her. The next evening, Grant was dressed in a sharp suit, looking every bit the powerful CEO he had once been. He was a little unsteady on his feet, but his eyes were bright, and his smile was infectious. Anna couldn't help but smile back as she watched him stand, ready to go. "Are you ready?" he asked, holding out his arm for her. Anna hesitated for a moment, feeling a rush of nerves flood through her. She had spent so long in this hospital, watching him fight for his life, that the idea of leaving this place felt almost surreal. But then she looked at Grant, really looked at him, and saw not the man in the hospital bed, but the man who had been there for her, who had shared his vulnerability with her, who had made her laugh and feel something she hadn't in years. "Yes," she said, her voice steady but filled with excitement. "I'm ready." They walked out of the room together, hand in hand, and for the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one that was full of possibility, full of hope. As they left the hospital and headed into the city, she realized that the future, for the first time, didn't seem so uncertain. With Grant by her side, maybe there was a chance for something more, something real. They spent the evening together, talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. It was the first time Anna had felt truly free in months. She forgot about the hospital, forgot about the uncertainty of Grant's recovery. For that one night, they were just two people, finding their way together. As the night came to an end, Grant took Anna's hand in his. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "This meant more to me than you can imagine." Anna smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "No," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you for showing me that there's still hope." And as they walked back to the hospital, hand in hand, Anna realized that no matter what the future held, they had each other, and that, she thought, was all that mattered. End of part 6. The following days felt like a dream to Anna. It wasn't just the date with Grant, although that had been a beautiful experience in itself. It was everything that had followed. They spent more time together, both inside and outside the hospital. Anna felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The doubts that had plagued her were slowly starting to fade. Grant's recovery was still uncertain, but his presence in her life had brought a lightness to her heart that she had forgotten was possible. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding back until he came into her life. His vulnerability had cracked open a part of her heart she had long guarded, and now, she couldn't imagine being without him. But as much as Anna tried to focus on the happiness she was feeling, the weight of reality began to settle in. She had been so caught up in the moment, so caught up in Grant's healing and the hope that they could build something together, that she had forgotten about the pressures surrounding them both. The hospital was still a constant presence in their lives, and Grant's recovery, though progressing, was far from complete. Anna couldn't ignore the challenges ahead. She had to face the truth their lives were not just about the love they had found in each other, but about the circumstances they had to navigate to keep that love alive. One afternoon, as Anna was sitting by Grant's bed, helping him with his physical therapy, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He seemed distracted, quieter than usual. His movements were slower, and his eyes looked distant, as if he was lost in thought. "Grant?" she asked softly, her voice laced with concern. "Are you okay?" Grant looked up at her, his face unreadable. He hadn't expected her to notice, but she always did. She saw things that others missed. His hand gripped the armrest of the chair, and for a moment, he seemed unsure of how to respond. "I'm fine," he finally said, his voice steady, though there was a trace of weariness behind it. "I just have a lot on my mind." Anna could tell there was more he wasn't saying. "Grant," she pressed gently, "you can talk to me. You know you can." He sighed, leaning back against the pillow. He had been so focused on getting better, on rebuilding his life, that the reality of everything else had started to catch up with him. "It's just," he began, his voice trailing off. "I've been thinking about the future. About everything that's happened. About how I've been living my life and what's next." Anna stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. She could sense his struggle, the uncertainty that lingered beneath his calm exterior. He was still grappling with the changes in his life, the trauma of the accident, and the slow rebuilding of his identity. But she wasn't sure how to help him navigate these feelings. She didn't want to push him, but she didn't want him to feel alone either. Grant turned his gaze to the window, watching the light shift as the day wore on. "I don't know if I'm ready for everything to change. I'm not just talking about my recovery," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm talking about everything, the way I've lived, the way I've treated people, the way I've pushed everything else aside for work. It's hard to figure out where I fit into all of this now." Anna's heart ached for him. She had seen the strength in him, the way he had fought to recover, but now she saw the vulnerability in his words. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Grant," she said softly. "This is all new for both of us. You're not alone in this." Grant looked at her then, his expression softening. "I know. And that means more to me than you'll ever understand." He reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I'm just scared, Anna. Scared that when everything is said and done, I won't know who I am anymore." Anna squeezed his hand, her heart heavy with empathy. She understood that fear all too well. The fear of losing yourself in the midst of change, of not knowing where you belong. But she also knew that they didn't have to face this journey alone. They had each other, and that meant more than anything. "We'll figure it out together," Anna said quietly. "One step at a time." Grant smiled faintly, and for the first time in a long while, he looked at peace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "For being here. For understanding." Anna nodded, a sense of relief washing over her. They still had a long road ahead, but they would face it together, one step at a time, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that, despite the uncertainty, there was hope for their future. Together, they could rebuild, not just his life, but their lives. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make it work, no matter what. End of part 7. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind to Anna and Grant. As his recovery continued, so did the emotional healing between them. They had started to open up to each other in ways they hadn't before, and the more they shared, the more Anna realized just how much Grant had changed, not just physically, but emotionally as well. He was no longer the cold, distant man who had spent his life buried in work. He was someone who cared deeply about her, someone who was willing to face his past and build a future with her. But despite the progress, Anna couldn't shake the lingering doubt that had been following her. What if this was all temporary? What if, once Grant was fully recovered, he would go back to the man he had been before, the man who had buried himself in his empire and neglected everything else? One evening, as Anna was leaving the hospital after a long shift, she received a call from Grant. She hadn't expected to hear from him so late, but she answered quickly, her heart racing with anticipation. "Hey, Grant. Everything okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Grant's voice came through the phone, sounding a little strained. "Anna, can you meet me tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something important." His words were serious, and Anna's stomach twisted with worry. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her tone steady. "Is everything all right?" There was a brief pause on the other end before Grant spoke again, his voice quieter now. "I don't know, Anna. I just feel like I'm at a crossroads. I need to figure out what comes next. And I want you to be there with me when I do." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had sensed the unease in him, the uncertainty he had been carrying around. She knew that the road to recovery wasn't just about his physical health, but his mental and emotional well-being too. She had seen how hard he was working to find himself again, and the thought that he might still be struggling with that made her ache. "I'll be there," Anna said softly, her voice filled with reassurance. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She didn't know what was coming, but she knew that she couldn't back away from him now. They had come too far to let fear or doubt tear them apart. The next day, Anna met Grant at a quiet cafe, just outside the hospital. It was one of those rare moments when they could sit and talk without the pressure of medical charts, nurses, or hospital rooms. As she walked into the cafe, she spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, looking out the window with a thoughtful expression on his face. Grant looked up as Anna approached, his face softening as he saw her. He stood up to greet her, and for a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other. Anna could see the weight in his eyes, the same uncertainty he had shared with her the night before. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice low. Anna smiled warmly, trying to put him at ease. "Of course, Grant. What's on your mind?" she asked gently as she sat down across from him. Grant hesitated for a moment before he spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what's next. About where I go from here. And I realized something. I've spent so much of my life focused on building my empire, on proving myself to the world, that I lost sight of what really matters. I lost sight of what's important. And now I'm realizing that the most important thing in my life is you, Anna." Anna's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had never expected him to say something like this, but deep down, she had known. She had always known that there was something more between them than just the surface-level connection. But hearing it from him, hearing how vulnerable and honest he was being, left her speechless. Grant continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not perfect. I'm still figuring things out. But I want to be with you, Anna. I want to see where this goes, together. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to hide from my feelings." Anna felt a surge of emotion. She had been holding back for so long, too afraid to fully embrace what she was feeling. But now, as she looked at Grant, she realized that she didn't have to be afraid anymore. He was here, fully present, and he wanted to be with her. And that was all that mattered. "Grant," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I feel the same way. I've been afraid too, afraid of what comes next, but I don't want to be scared anymore. I want this. I want us." Grant smiled, a look of relief crossing his face. "Then let's take this one step at a time. Together." As Anna looked at him, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she knew that whatever happened, they would face it together. And that was enough. End of part 8. The days that followed were filled with a sense of relief and excitement. Anna and Grant had crossed a threshold in their relationship, one that they could never go back from. The walls that had been built between them, those fears, doubts, and insecurities had crumbled away, replaced with something stronger, something real. They spent more time together, not just as patient and nurse, but as two people who had finally admitted their feelings for each other. They shared quiet evenings, long walks through the park, and talked about everything they had been through, the struggles, the healing, and the new hope they were finding together. Grant's recovery was progressing steadily, and with each passing day, he seemed to grow more like the man he had been before the accident. His confidence was returning, but now, he was different. He had a new sense of appreciation for the little things, for the people around him, especially Anna. And Anna, for her part, had learned to embrace the uncertainty of life. She had spent so long protecting herself from getting hurt that she had forgotten what it was like to let go, to trust in something or someone. But with Grant, she felt safe, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. One evening, after a long day of therapy and meetings, Grant invited Anna out for dinner. They had been talking about taking things slow, but tonight felt different. As they sat across from each other at a quiet table in a small bistro, Anna couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over her. She was no longer the nurse who had been just doing her job. She was someone who had found love, someone who had found the courage to let her heart be open. Grant reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Anna," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, "I can't imagine where I would be without you. You've been my anchor through all of this. You've shown me what it means to care, to love, and to let go of the things that don't matter. You've helped me heal in ways I never thought possible." Anna smiled, feeling her heart swell at his words. "Grant," she replied, her voice thick with emotion, "I never expected this. I never expected to feel this way about anyone again. But you've made me believe in something real. You've made me believe in us." Grant squeezed her hand, his eyes warm with affection. "Then let's make this real, Anna. Let's take this step, together. No more holding back, no more doubting. Let's face whatever comes next, together." Anna nodded, her heart racing. She had always been the one to hold back, to keep her emotions locked away, but with Grant, she felt like she could finally let go. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure: she didn't want to face it without him. As they finished dinner, Grant stood up and pulled her into a gentle embrace. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Anna," he whispered in her ear. "I don't have all the answers, but I know that I want to build a future with you by my side." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined she would be standing here, in this moment, with the man she loved, hearing those words from him. But as she pulled away and looked into his eyes, she knew that this was the beginning of something beautiful. They had both been through so much, and now they had each other. That was all they needed. "Yes," she whispered back, her voice filled with certainty. "I want that too. I want us." As they walked out of the bistro, hand in hand, Anna felt a wave of contentment wash over her. She didn't know what challenges they would face in the future, but she was ready to face them with Grant. Together, they would navigate whatever came their way, supporting each other every step of the way. In that moment, Anna realized that home wasn't a place, it was a person. And she had found her home in Grant. End of part 9.